Cheerilee settled into the prompt corner for the third time that night. Her stomach rumbled and her throat was quite dry. In hindsight, she should probably have put some popcorn and water here. The fuck do you need popcorn and water with? You have Scootaloo jelly. Go drink some of that. You said it tasted good. You have Scootaloo in a bathtub. Go bathe in that. There you go. That's how this cheerleader takes baths. That's how bunnies clean themselves. That's how bathing in Philly. With a sigh, she turned her attention to the stage and just let her mind wander to the rhythm of the story for a while. No, my decision is final. You'll have to go, the king screamed at Sir Altrua, who returned his indignant glances with worried looks. Once like this, what in my mouth again. Okay. But my king, the real guard, they are needed to defend the capital with tension rising in the east. We have no men to spare, you know this. Altrius, I trust in your capabilities you will not fail me, like the others have, for if you do, I'll have to accept this Cretan's challenge myself. Yep, I know it doesn't sound like Apple Bloom at all. Sorry guys, that's what you're gonna do. I can't do redneck voices. Not female redneck anyway. The king sighed, the weight of the situation settling and pressing heavily upon his shoulders. Altrius seeing his knife, his king's troubles etched on his face, fell silent and simply nodded. Without a farther word, the king turned around and walked away, leaving the confines of the royal court to head down Reginald's part of the stage. The two fillies played their part so well it was easier to forget they were playing at all, even for cheer. Apple Bloom had shown at almost single-minded dedication to the script. Fuck that sentence. Fuck. Apple Bloom had shown an almost single-minded dedication to the script. And knowing it thoroughly, as she did obviously, allowed her to concentrate on other aspects of acting. The words just came on their own. Sweetie Belle had been a bit less diligent, but she possessed a way with words and vocalizations that almost made her a natural actor. Although Cheerilee ventured to guess that singing was probably more her style. No dip, Sherlock, it's freaking her name. That singing was probably more her style. It was something ironic that they'd both find their end doing something they were at least moderately competent at, while they were otherwise pretty much a waste of space. Heh, irony. But Cheerilee was fuck! But Cheerilee was careful not to equate a single useful skill to being a worthwhile individual. The play fell into a familiar pattern by this point. Sir Altrius being the third attempt to finally put a stop to Reginald the Sly. Sweetie Belle, like the other three before her, started to make her way to the other side of the stage. Although she clearly wasn't aiming to get to the mountain Scootaloo had disappeared into, or the house that the other two fillies had found. Instead, she resolutely headed for a forest at the very far end of the stage, and that is to say, to the few cardboard trees that together gave the impression of a forest. It's totally what they do in live action. Cardboard cutouts all the way. She quickly reached her destination, and as the lights above the part of the stage was turned on, it became clear somebody was already waiting for Sir Altrius there. The audience wasn't very surprised when it became clear it was Reginald once again, but the bear trap around one of his back legs, which he did seem to get out of, was certainly an unforeseen twist. The knight approached carefully, but Reginald inevitably picked up one of his hosts before too long and craned his neck to look around. Well, well, seems at least one of us is in luck today, the great night. The great night arriving during the villain's finest hour. You must be thrilled, he said bitterly, while wincing slightly. I've had that instant before. Arthur said nothing for a few minutes. Are you hurt? He finally asked. The villainous pony laughed and shook his head, slowly dripping with sarcasm. Oh, no. I think it's very comfortable, in fact. I'll get you, the knight responded as he stepped forward. But if you make one strange move... Wait, I'll get you out, the knight responded as he stepped forward. But if you make one strange move... Ow. Ow, ow, throat hurt. He never got to finish his sentence, as suddenly something caught around his hind legs and the world flipped upside down. Before the knight realized what was happening, he was hanging upside down from a nearby tree. Wait, he was hanging down from a nearby tree by his hoofs. This is very confusing. Sweetie Belle is being addressed as a he because she's playing a he with snips of a he. Hey, let me down! Reginald cackled maniacally as he opened the clamp around his sleeve, something impressive looking fake, but nothing more than that. He casually strolled over to the captured knight and mockingly gave him a little push, making Sweetie Belle swing around slightly. Ah, dear Sir Atras, is it not? That's one for skulking about, are we? You'd have to be quite good not to be spotted by me, anyway. And that's legendary kindness. Who knew it'd get you in the position you are in now? He laughed again, giving the knight another push to keep him swinging. But 1 second, change them. Okay. You know what's good for you, Reginald. You'll come with me. The king is fed up, and whatever his next move may be, you'll probably not like it if you stick around here. Altruist replied, holding on to as much dignity as he could while hanging upside down and swinging around. I've heard the same tale spun twice before, good stallion. I'm quite sick of it by now, so if you don't mind, this be goodbye. Say hello to the beasts of the underworld for me. The sly sneered as he pulled one of the omnipresent hidden levers behind the tree. The floor opened and the rope was released all at once, soon the fluid streaming down in an open hitch in the floor. As the lights faded and Reginald disappeared off scene. Oh fuck, shit, damn it. Oh no, be recorded. Oh fuck. Well, that was my phone powering on. Oh, this is me turning down the volume of it. And that was you listening to my phone powering on. And me explaining what it was. Sweetie Belle's soft floor approached rapidly and the panic coiled around her like a snake. Wasn't there supposed to be a few mattresses? With a thud, she hit the ground. As she lay there motionless, she didn't think about anything for a while. When she came to, she was in a dimly lit room, lying on a table of some description. She felt a nasty bump on her heart and sobbed painfully to get the rhythm of her heartbeat. But then she tried to touch it with one of her hoofs. She realized her front legs were tied above her with rope, while her hind legs were bound on the other side. The ropes were basically keeping her stretched out as much as possible. It was more than a little uncomfortable. It also felt as if the table had a large hole in it, right underneath the middle of her back, but she couldn't, for the life of her, figure out why. Her first thought was that she had probably hit her head harder than she thought, that this was all hallucinations or some sort of dream. But if it was mighty convincing one at that. Suddenly she imagined seeing something move in the shadows. A shape that broke the monotony of immobile shadows of a deeper kind of darkness. She imagined seeing something move in the shadows, a shape that broke the monotony of immobile. The monotony of immobile shadows of a deeper kind of darkness. Is someone there? The filly said shakingly. Apple Bloom and Scootaloo had told her more than a few scary stories during their camping camping trips, and I underrated about it started off just like this. She sighed in relief as Cheerilee stepped into the little circle of light. Oh, Teach! I hit my head and I don't know where we are. So could you please? She begged, nodding her head towards the ropes. Undo these ropes, because they're totally not supposed to be like this. White skin pale. Her white skin grew even pale and then she realized Cheerilee was carrying a hammer in her mouth. She didn't know why they freaked her out all of a sudden, but there was something in Cheerilee's eyes. Miss? She squeaked weakly. Cheerilee only responded was to lift up one of her hooves, which they heard be wearing another one of those special work pony shoes, not unlike the one she'd used to hold the chisel. This one had a far smaller hole. The circle was completely closed off. It was designed to hold nails, while still being able to slip a shoe off the nail through the opening, once the job was almost done. Ow, 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 ow. Okay, tip for people, don't keep your laptop on your legs. It will overheat and burn you. She felt a trickle of warm blood coat the nail and bit her lip as she struggled to keep calm. For she knew simply attempting to pull her hoof away now would cause even more damage and more importantly pain. Not that the ropes currently offered her much freedom of the moment, but she didn't want to take any risks. With tears in her eyes, she tried pleading with Cheerilee again, completely bewildered by this recent chain of events, but her mind racing to figure out what was going on. How could she wake up from the nightmare? Please stop. What? The filly whimpered. Cheerilee just smiled sweetly, as best she could, with a hammer between her teeth, and she prepared another nail. Oh, I missed the whole paragraph. By the way, I'm not going back to read it, so fuck you. But I lost my place. This time, putting it in place against the filly's other hind hoof, the mare looked Sweetie Belle in the eyes intensely for a moment, making sure she knew exactly what was coming for her. Sweetie Belle whimpered and swallowed back a new burst of tears before crying out, "No! Help! Sis! Rarity! Any pony!" Gonna cough in a second and pause the video. But no pony replied, let alone came to her rescue. As Cheerilee hammered down to this for the second time, driving the nail through the filly's left hoof into the table with just a few well-aimed blows. Sweetie Belle squeaked in pain as she tried her best to keep still. The necessity of remaining still weighed down upon her as heavily as the pain itself. She kind of understood the concept between walking it off a lot better now. Actually, she'd have given anything to be able to do just that. 1 second. She sobbed as Cheerilee ducked down to retrieve another nail, walking around to the other side of the table. No, please, no, no! The white-coated filly sobbed, letting out a desperate cry as Cheerilee started becoming one of the butt away, before quickly giving her the same with the other one as well. Oh, crap. Sweetie Belle could feel pain radiating through each one of her legs, but for her tormentor it still wasn't enough. Unaffected by the filly's crying and pleading, she continued on and drove the second nail to each the filly's legs. This time, straight through the ankle, just above the hoofs themselves. Little pools of blood started to form around her hoofs, falling off the edge of the table and dripping down to the ground lazily. In the heat of the moment, Julie dropped the hammer and timidly held her tongue underneath one of them, where the little stream savoring the taste of Sweetie Belle's warm blood as it dripped into her mouth. It even tasted better than Scootaloo's had, perhaps because it had been perhaps because it hadn't had as much time to cool down yet. The filly was still crying softly as Julie rummaged about, retrieving one of the several matches she had stored in the room. She struck against the nearby wall and bowed her head down to light it, a fire underneath the metal cylinder. To light a fire underneath the metal cylinder. They reached up from just above the floor to the table itself, connecting to the table in the spot where Sweetie Belle had bored a hole in the wood earlier. This is very interesting. The little bits of wood and tinder the mare had prepared for this occasion caught on fire quickly, and continued burning nicely, smoke trickling up to hang just underneath the ceiling. She looked up at it, but wasn't too worried. The room was badly ventilated, but it was a small fire, and she wouldn't need it much longer any case. A minute or two passed, Cheerilee just mesmerized by the small flames as she waited, thinking of the fun she had with snails earlier. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. No. The white filly slowly stopped crying, still feeling pathetic as she looked at Cheerilee with teary eyes, confused by the mare's actions, but hopeful that this pause meant she was considering keeping her against her will. Please, miss, if you let me go, I won't tell any pony, I promise. She managed to say, but with her trembling lips. Yes, and I managed to say with a trembling wisp. And again, Cheerilee neglected to respond. Suddenly, Sweetie Belle became aware of a panicked squeaking noise coming from somewhere in the room. The sound increased in intensity steadily until it sounded like a great many rats were fearing for their life somewhere, even though they didn't seem to make any sense. She had some trouble locating the source of the noise until she suddenly realized it came from right underneath the table, from the thing Cheerilee was staring at, but which she could not see. As her teacher stepped close to the table, she mentally recoiled. But the mare simply leaned in and reached underneath the table itself, grabbing hold of the metal plate at the top of the cylinder with her teeth and pulling it out, removing the glass barrier between the cylinder and the hole underneath. Sweetie, in doing so, the squeaking quickly escalated to unprecedented levels. But still, Sweetie Belle couldn't make head or tail head nor tail of it. What did rats have to do with metal plate? Suddenly the filly gazed at her eyes wide. As her eyes grew wide with fear, she felt dozens of little claws scratch at her back. As the entrapped rats surged up from the overheated cylinder to find a new way to escape the flames. Even in their frenzied state, they recognized the difference in hardness between the metal prison and the filly's tender flesh, and they were fully prepared to put some effort into figuring a way out of it. It meant living to squeak another day. Many mouths and claws worked together as they started to gnaw and tear at the filly's back, her terrified screams of pain not managing to extract any mercy from the soulless vermin. She tried arching her back to lift it out of reach, but which would also have set them free, but with her body stretched to its limit and held firmly in place by the rope and nails, she couldn't even lift it in a tenth of an inch. The rats quickly ripped away patches of her coat and skin, relentlessly going on to gnaw at her flesh. The filly screamed as she thrashed her head about from side to side, and never would do anything else as the rats started to devour her alive, piece by piece. Like a well-oiled digging intently, they ripped and tugged at her muscles and ligaments, tearing up sinews and arteries both as they pushed onward. Several of them came face to face with her spine, but decided to simply gnaw around it when it proved to be a nut too hard to crack. And after all, they were aiming to break free and didn't have a bone to pick with elements that made up Sweetie's body in particular. That's so nitpick. The filly herself shrieked like a banshee, foam appearing on her mouth as her muscles convulsed and her body thrashed about as much as it could. There's not to say, not much at all. Regardless of what, she still moved enough for the nails to pull out at the wounds they had inflicted on her, causing the holes to become larger and bleed even more profusely.